Yep, you read the title right. You saw the thumbnail. We're doing a list video, baby. Sunbreak is only weeks away at this point, and I have to admit, I've been enjoying de-rusting from Rise and aiming for some sets and weapons to gear up for release. We've received a good amount of info at this point about monsters old and new that will be included in Sunbreak, all of which have more or less been hits. But what is left that hasn't been announced? Well, hopefully a lot, but regardless, it's always fun to speculate about what might be around the corner. Now, this is not a predictions list because, well, we all know how horrendous I am at those. This is simply a wish list, I guess, for monsters I'd like to see and I think would suit Sunbreak from a gameplay and thematic perspective. Monster Hunter as a series is known for bringing back monsters from past games, especially those that are fan favorites. Not a game has gone by where we don't see the likes of Diablos or Zenoga or Nagakuga since they were first introduced, and frankly, it seems that trend is here to stay, for better or for worse. Before you come at me down in the comments, I don't want each and every one of these monsters to make an appearance in Sunbreak, and I don't necessarily think they would get chosen at all. I just think they'd suit the expansion. Honestly, Capcom leans too heavily on its existing catalogue of monsters when building the rosters for their games these days, and I'd much rather there just be a large range of new monsters with few to no returning monsters for the most part. So with all that said and done, I am Peak Ginger, and this is 6-ish monsters I think should make a return in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. My first pick out the gate is a very unique monster straight out of the 4th generation called Nigerala. Alright, before you tell me, yes, I know about the IGN article that went on about why Lagiacrus isn't coming back, and yes, that probably applies to Nigerala too for the same reasons, but I'd already recorded this and I really like Nigerala, so he's staying there, goddammit. Nigerala was one of the monsters front and center of marketing heading into Monster Hunter 4, and debuted a new class of monster known as the Snake Wyverns. To this day, it and its subspecies remain the only large monsters in this classification, with the only other one being Remobra. Nigerala was a fresh and exciting design, and one of the most memorable to come out of Gen 4 in my opinion. It attacks with a series of strikes with its tail and long serpentine body, as well as constricting the players, putting the hunter into what me and my friends used to call the dojo. This is probably its most iconic attack, where it wraps around you to prevent you from escaping before biting at you to paralyze you, and then digging and bursting up from beneath, dealing a decent sum of damage. Nigerala would also throw its scales to emit high-pitched screams similar to sort of tiny localized roars, and it could exploit them using sound too. All in all, it's just a really unique and interesting monster, and if you ask me, it paved the way for Mizutsune and Almudron, who utilized their length and tails in a more creative way. Originally, Nigerala sits around the 4-star level in terms of difficulty, but with some new tech for the increased verticality of Rise, I could see it getting the Anjanath and Tobigadachi treatment and being bumped up a level or two. Nigerala's size and unique skeleton could give it an edge and provide a very unique experience with the wirebugs, and perhaps even open the door for some brand new snake wyverns to finally make their debut. Then again, with all the focus on fang wyverns in Gen 5, perhaps they're waiting till Monster Hunter 6 to really make the snake wyvern shine. Who knows? My next pick is actually multiple monsters, so I guess I'm cheating a little bit, but they're all here for the same reason. Shengaren, Lao Shenlang, and Amatsu. These 3 monsters are notorious for being really interesting or cool monster designs with pretty uninspired combat. All 3 of them are these colossal monsters that are bigger than the hunter by many, many orders of magnitude, but with regards to Shen and Lao, the closest you get to finding them is being stood on as they leisurely stroll toward a castle. Yamatsukami fares a bit better in Gen 2, I mean, at least it fights you, but all in all, they just fall far flatter than they should. So why are they on this list if they're so boring? Well, I, along with a lot of people, am not a huge fan of the rampages, but I do think that with a few tweaks here and there, they could really be a great staging ground for the colossal monsters of old. The added complexity to the armaments was something that was sorely lacking previously, and was part of the reason the hunts were so bland and boring. You had very limited ammo for cannons and ballistae, and there's nothing particularly fun about dodging just a monster moving forward. But with rampages, there's a whole added layer of castle defense just begging to be transitioned to a colossal monster fight. You could even scale the monsters with your wirebugs as if they themselves were terrain, and give them brand new attacks and animations, along with new AI based on where you're hitting them or standing on them, and you have a colossal monster battle worth the name and prestige it should have had for years. Alright, the next one, it's gotta be Zamtrios, right? He's probably the most no-brainer monster to be added to Rise. Like, I cannot think of a monster better suited for the Frost Islands than Zamtrios. It's a giant shark frog that covers itself in frozen armor. It'd just be right at home. At the moment, Tetranodon is the only large amphibian in Rise, so Zamtrios would actually be a nice addition to the game for some diversity there. In fact, just get rid of Tetranodon entirely in the Frost Islands. It was always weird that he was there anyway, considering he's, like, covered in moss. moss. For those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Zamtrios in past games, it is just about the definition of subverting expectations. You start off the fight and it's a pretty cool monster. As I said, it's halfway between a shark and a frog. Then it grows pointy ice armor and gets even cooler. But you could never be prepared for what was next. About halfway through the fight, it shows off its true form, ballooning up to several times its size, just the thickest lad you've ever seen. Absolute unit, and proceeds to try and roll around and crush the hunter with like zero finesse. It's just a really fun pick and would be right at home in Sunbreak. Also, Zamites are literally already in Rise, and they're just juvenile Zamtrios. But I suppose that line of thinking is flawed because you have Uroctors, Basarios, Jagras, Bullfangers, Jaggies, and even a baby Tetsukabra, all in Rise without an adult too, so yeah. My next pick is a different colossal monster for a different reason. Dalamadur. Debuting at the end of Monster Hunter 4, it is a snake-like monster, much like Nigerala, except for the fact that it is utterly gigantic. The longest monster in the mainline series, Dalamadur was an absolute spectacle to behold atop the spear-tip crag and is an elder dragon like no other. It wraps itself around the terrain and shifts the battle to different angles as you progress through the fight, and I can't help but think, imagine this with wirebugs. You already spend a bunch of this fight scaling the cliff sides and the monster itself, so just lean into that really hard. You can even make it so the Dalamadur is stretching through a gigantic castle, as opposed to atop a mountain, to keep that general theme of Sunbreak. There is a lot of potential there. Its size can be a blessing and not a curse. We've already seen that it hasn't been forgotten actually, because in Monster Hunter World, the Rotten Vale was made up of several Dalamadur skeletons, so there is still hope for the giant snake. I wouldn't want it to be a rampage as such and be more like the original fight, a one-on-one with a titan, you know? Or 4-on-1, I guess. Well, 8-on-1? If you count the cats and dogs. Okay, so, let's just cut the crap. It's time. He's ready. Monobloss. Go watch my older video about Monobloss for the history lesson, but the time has come for Monobloss to jump back in. Now, I know what you're going to say, we already have Diabloss and Apex Diabloss and probably Black Diabloss too. Why do we need Monobloss? It's the same. Okay, I hear you, but what if, right? What if it wasn't the same? With all of the new and exciting features of Gen 5, Monobloss deserves an overhaul too. Just because it's physically similar to Diabloss doesn't mean the fight has to be the same. We could see Monobloss doing a wide range of thrusting and sweeping attacks with its gigantic single horn, less about charging and brute force, more about lunging and stabbing. You know, a little bit of finesse, maybe. It could be the longsword to Diabloss's greatsword, you know? I think it could work really well as a parallel to Diabloss and breathe new life into a very forgotten monster. My last pick is none other than the Nursecilla, and I'm starting to realize how much I like the Gen 4 designs here. Nursecilla did wirebugs before wirebugs were cool, especially the subspecies, and offers a really interesting fight due to it being entirely unique in its design. At the time, anyway. It was the first and only Temnoceran before we got Rachna Kadaki in Rise, and it was such a wild and fresh monster when it was first introduced that it sticks out as one of the most memorable monsters in the 4th generation. We'd had crabs and bugs before, but no spiders, and it even had the completely unnecessary but metal as fuck detail of being draped in the peeled skin of Gypsaros, or Kazoo. Yes. Nursecilla had the ability to not only poison you, but also put you to sleep. And if all of that wasn't horrific enough, there was also this terrifying attack. I think it would be right at home in the new Citadel map and even swinging around the flooded forest. Plus, we can always use more monsters that embrace terrain a bit more. All in all, it's a perfect candidate for a monster that can keep up with the hunter. It's nimble and agile, and we could easily see it scaling terrain and swinging on its own web while you try and desperately wirebug away from its horrific extendo jaw attack. Alright, so those are probably my picks for monsters that would be right at home in Sunbreak, should they be lucky enough to be chosen. But before we wrap up the video, there are a couple of honorable mentions. Monsters that I would love to see again, but for one reason or another, they just wouldn't fit in, be it thematically or mechanically, I think anyway. Number 1 is Gammoth. Anyone who's been watching this channel for a bit knows how much I like the Gammoth. I'm a big fan of her design and her theme, and I even enjoy the fight quite a bit. But I just think Gammoth is too big and too slow to go up against the wirebugs. That could be remedied with an overhaul of the fight in general, which is a possibility, and we've already got a gigantic slow monster being added in the form of Garangolm, so who knows, I could be super wrong and the next reveal is Gammoth, but I'm not holding my breath. Number 2 is Agnactor. Now the fact that Uroctors are already in Rise, and instead of adding Agnactor, they made Magma Almudron instead, is just the rudest shit ever. But I just don't see there being 2 lava-based burrowing Leviathans, both at the same rank in the same game. It would just be a bit redundant, I think, and ultimately it's probably better off to just use that slot for an entirely different monster. I'm still pissed about it though. And the last one is the good old Amatsu. In the lead up to Rise, it seemed like a no-brainer that Amatsu would be coming back because the Japanese aesthetic of Kimura just suited it really well, being very in line with the Yakomo village from Portable Third, and I was pretty keen. Amatsu is cool, and taking the fight to it in the sky with the wirebugs sounded like a good time. Instead, we got Nawa and Ibushi, and well, I'm not complaining, Amatsu just seems like it really wouldn't be adding anything to that space. I know it uses the water element when the other 2 are Dragon and Thunder, but yeah, I think it's probably a safe bet that Amatsu will be shelved for now. And there it is, my picks for monsters that should make a return in Sunbreak. Like I said, think of this as a wish list rather than a prediction list. I don't necessarily think that these monsters will make a return, I just think that maybe they should. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and who do you think deserves a fresh coat of paint in Sunbreak? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel, maybe even hit that notification bell as well. Sunbreak is just around the corner, and I'm pretty excited to get stuck in, and I hope you'll come along for the ride. I'll catch you on the next one, folks. See you later.